They call him the King of Wall Street, but his real throne is built on blood and bullets. Lorenzo Moretti thought he was the smartest man in the room. He thought the girl pouring his scotch was just a pair of pretty eyes and a minimum-wage uniform. He decided to humiliate her in front of his crew with a complex financial question, a cruel joke to remind her of her place. But when she opened her mouth, she didn't just answer him. She destroyed him. This is the story of how a waitress brought a mafia don to his knees, not with a weapon, but with a secret that would shake the criminal underworld to its core. Buckle up. You are not ready for this twist. The rain in Tribeca didn't wash the grime away. It just made the expensive pavement slippery inside the Obsidian, New York's most exclusive members-only cigar lounge. The air smelled of aged leather, cedar, and fear. Lorenzo Moretti sat at the corner booth, the one permanently reserved for Mr. Davis, the shell identity he used for bookings. Lorenzo was 34, with eyes the color of a frozen lake and a jawline that looked like it had been cut from granite. He wore a three-piece charcoal suit that cost more than most people's cars, and he was currently bored out of his mind. The layering isn't working, Enzo, Dario whispered, leaning over the mahogany table. Dario was his consigliere, a man who was good with a knife but terrible with a calculator. The SEC is sniffing around the import logistics in Jersey. We have $6 million in cash sitting in the warehouse. It's rotting. Lorenzo swirled his scotch. I'd pay you to solve problems, Dario, not to describe them to me. If the logistics front is burned, move it through the art galleries in Chelsea. We can't. The new regulations on high-value art transactions just kicked in. Dario hissed. We're stuck. We're stuck. Lorenzo sighed, rubbing his temples. He was the don of the Moretti crime family, a modern organization that prided itself on being invisible. They didn't break kneecaps in the street anymore. They broke portfolios. But right now, they were drowning in liquidity. They couldn't clean. A waitress approached the table. She was small, with messy brown hair pulled back in a frantic bun and a uniform that was a size too big. Her name tag read, Elsa. She looked tired. Not just long shift tired, but life has beaten me down tired. Refill, gentlemen, Elsa asked, her voice soft, eyes fixed on the table, avoiding their gaze. Lorenzo looked at her. He saw a mouse, a nobody. And suddenly, a cruel streak of amusement flared up in him. He wanted to vent his frustration on someone who couldn't fight back. Tell me, Elsa, Lorenzo said, his voice smooth and dangerous. He caught her wrist gently as she reached for his glass. She froze. My friend here is having a bad day. He has a lot of, let's call it inventory, that he needs to move, but the market is tight. If you had $10 million of inventory that the government didn't know about, how would you hide it? Dario snickered. The two bodyguards standing by the wall smirked. It was a bully's game. They expected her to stutter, to say she'd buy a house, or to panic. Elsa looked at Lorenzo's hand on her wrist, then up at his face. Her eyes were hazel, and for a second, the fatigue vanished, replaced by a razor-sharp intellect that chilled Lorenzo to the bone. She gently pulled her hand away. She didn't retreat. She stepped closer. Is the inventory cash or digital assets? She asked. The table went silent. Dario's smile faltered. Tarish, Lorenzo said, narrowing his eyes. Cold, dirty cash. Elsa shifted her weight, tucking the serving tray under her arm. Well, art galleries are dead since the January regulations, and the Jersey logistics route is obvious. Everyone watches the ports. If you put it in a car wash or a laundromat, you'll be structuring deposits, and the IRS algorithms will flag you in 3 months. Lorenzo sat up straighter. The ambient noise of the club seemed to fade. So, Elsa continued, her voice devoid of emotion, I'd use a synthetic derivative strategy. I'd open a shell corporation in Estonia. Digital residency takes 20 minutes. Then I'd issue a series of microloans to a network of peer-to-peer lending platforms in Southeast Asia using Bitcoin converted through a privacy tumbler like Monero. The returns come back as legitimate investment income. Taxed at a lower rate, you lose 12% on the exchange, but you gain 100% clean liquidity. She paused, looking at Dario, then back to Lorenzo. But if you're really desperate, she added, you could look into purchasing distressed commercial real estate bonds in the Midwest. Nobody is watching Ohio right now. You buy the debt for pennies, pay it off with the dirty cash through a blind trust, and when the property value stabilizes, you sell. It's a write-off and a wash. She picked up the empty scotch glass. I'll get that refill now. No ice, right? She walked away toward the bar. Lorenzo didn't move. He didn't blink. Enzo, Dario whispered, his face pale. Who the hell is she? Lorenzo watched Elsa navigate through the crowd. She wasn't a waitress. That was a costume, and Lorenzo Moretti had just found the most interesting thing in New York City. I don't know, Lorenzo murmured, a predator's grin slowly forming on his face. But I'm going to find out. Bring the car around. We're not leaving until she does. Elsa Jenkins clocked out at 2 a.m. Her feet throbbed. The encounter with the man in the charcoal suit, Mr. Davis, as the reservations said, had rattled her. She had slipped. She had let the mask fall. Stupid. She chided herself as she pushed open the heavy metal back door of the obsidian and stepped into the alleyway. You're supposed to be invisible. You're supposed to be dead. She pulled her coat tighter. It was a cheap wool blend from a thrift store, a far cry from the cashmere she used to wear when she was Elsa Bennett, the youngest senior analyst at Goldman Sachs. But Elsa Bennett was a wanted woman, or rather, a woman wanted by people who didn't involve the police. She began to walk briskly toward the subway station. The streets were empty. A black SUV with tinted windows rolled slowly alongside her. Elsa's heart hammered against her ribs. She kept walking, staring straight ahead. Don't run. Running makes you pray. The window rolled down. It was him, the man with the ice blue eyes. Get in, Elsa, Lorenzo said. It wasn't a request. I prefer the subway, she said, her voice shaking slightly. The subway is full of rats, Lorenzo replied, and I think you and I have some economics to discuss. Specifically, that distressed real estate bond strategy in Ohio. I was just guessing, she lied. I watch a lot of YouTube videos. Lorenzo chuckled, a dark, low sound. Get in the car, Elsa. Or should I call you by your real name? I'm sure a fingerprint scan off that glass you touched would be very illuminating. She froze. He was bluffing. He had to be. But if he wasn't, if he ran her prints and found out who her father was or what she was accused of stealing, she was dead anyway. She opened the door and climbed into the plush leather interior. The car smelled of expensive cologne and gun oil. Daria was driving. Lorenzo sat next to her, offering her a bottle of water. Who are you? Lorenzo asked. And don't lie to me. I have a very low tolerance for lies. My name is Elsa Jenkins. She stuck to the alias. I'm a waitress. I studied finance in college, but I dropped out. Debt. You didn't drop out, Lorenzo said, studying her profile. You talk like a forensic accountant. You talk like someone who knows how the sausage is made because you used to run the slaughterhouse. He pulled a laptop from the seat pocket and opened it. The screen displayed a complex spreadsheet. It was a chaotic mess of numbers, red lines and routing numbers. This, Lorenzo said, pointing to the screen, is a ledger from one of my legitimate subsidiaries. It's bleeding money. My accountants say it's market volatility. I think they're skimming. If you can tell me where the money is going in 5 minutes, I'll give you $50,000 right now, cash. Elsa looked at the screen. 50,000. That was enough to get her a fake passport, enough to leave New York and disappear to somewhere safe like Wyoming or Peru. And if I can't, she asked. Then I open this door and push you out while the car is moving, Lorenzo said. He wasn't smiling. Elsa took the laptop. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad. Her brain, starved of intellectual challenge for 2 years, woke up. She scanned the columns. Receivables. Overhead. Consulting fees. Stop, she said after 90 seconds. You found it? Dario asked from the front seat, skeptical. Here, Elsa pointed. Column G, row 402, consulting services from Gemini Holdings. It's a recurring monthly payment of $45,000. But look at the cross-reference in the overhead expenses. You're also paying rent to a Gemini Properties for a warehouse in Queens that, according to the square footage listed in cell J12, doesn't exist. It's a phantom vendor. She typed a quick command. And if I cross-reference the tax ID of Gemini Holdings, yes, it matches the personal social security number of your CFO's wife, just scrambled. He's not skimming. He's looting you. Lorenzo stared at the screen. The silence in the car was heavy. He looked at Dario. Handle the CFO, Lorenzo said quietly. He looked at Dario. Handle the CFO, Lorenzo said quietly. Consider it done, boss, Dario said, his voice grim. Lorenzo turned back to Elsa. The playfulness was gone. He looked at her with a mix of awe and possession. You just saved me $2 million a year, he said. Where's my $50,000? Elsa asked, extending her hand. Lorenzo laughed. He reached into a bag at his feet and pulled out 2 thick stacks of banded bills. He tossed them into a lap. There, 50 grand. Thank you, Elsa said, clutching the money. Now let me out. No, Lorenzo said, clutching the money. Now let me out. No, Lorenzo said. Elsa's blood ran cold. We had a deal. The deal was I wouldn't push you out of the car, Lorenzo corrected. I'm keeping that promise. But I have a new offer. My CFO position just opened up. I want you to fill it. I can't work for a mobster, Elsa snapped. I prefer a venture capitalist with aggressive tendencies. Lorenzo smirked. And you don't have a choice, Elsa. Because while you were looking at the spreadsheet, I had my team run facial recognition on the security footage from the club. He held up his phone. On the screen was a news article from 3 years ago. Wall Street Prudig wanted for Imbeds Zellerman, Elsa Bennett accused of stealing $50 million from Cartel Silan. 50 million from Cartel Silas. Elsa felt the air leave her lungs. You're not just a waitress, Lorenzo whispered, leaning close enough that she could feel the heat of his breath. You're Elsa Bennett, the woman who stole from the Mexican cartels and lived to tell about it. You're hiding from them, but if you work for me, I can protect you. If you walk away, I might just accidentally forward your location to the Baja cartel. Tears pricked her eyes. It was a gilded cage. He had trapped her. What do you want? She whispered. I want do you want? She whispered. I want to legitimize the family business, Lorenzo said, his gaze intense. I want to be completely legal in 5 years, and you are the only person smart enough to get me there. He extended his hand. Welcome to the family, Elsa. The elevator ride to the penthouse of the Moretti Tower took 45 seconds for Elsa. It felt like a descent into the underworld, even though she was shooting upwards toward the sky. The doors slid open to reveal a sprawling apartment that looked less like a home and more like a fortress of solitude. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of Manhattan City. Lorenzo owned a significant chunk of. The furniture was stark, Italian, and uncomfortable looking. Dario will show you to the guest suite, Lorenzo said, checking his watch. You have 2 hours. Shower, sleep, or scream into a pillow. I don't care. But at 8 a.m., my tailor arrives, and at 10 a.m., you meet the board. The board? Elsa asked, clutching her thrift store bag. The capos, Lorenzo corrected, his eyes cold. My uncles, my cousins, the men who control the streets, they are going to hate you. They are going to want to kill you because you are an outsider and, worse, a woman. If you don't convince them you can make them richer than they already are, I won't be able to stop them from throwing you off the balcony. He turned and walked away toward his office. Welcome to the high life, Elsa. 3 hours later, Elsa Bennett stood in front of a mirror she probably couldn't afford to touch. The transformation was absolute. The messy bun was gone, replaced by a sleek, sharp blowout that framed her face like a helmet. The oversized waitress uniform had been discarded for a tailored navy blue power suit that hugged her waist and flared at the trousers, paired with 4-inch stiletto heels that could double as weapons. She looked like the shark she used to be at Goldman Sachs. She looked like the woman who had embezzled $50 million. "Showtime," Dario said from the doorway. He looked at her with a grudging respect. "Don't trip." They walked into the conference room. It was thick with cigar smoke and testosterone. Around the long oak table sat 6 men. At the head sat Lorenzo, looking like a king on a throne. To his right was Salvatore, an older man with skin like leather and the breathing wheeze that sounded like a broken accordion. To his left was Luca, Lorenzo's cousin, young, flashy, wearing a diamond watch that caught the light, with a face that screamed cruelty. "This is the girl," Salvatore rasped, not even looking at Elsa. "The waitress." "Enzo, you insult us. She's not a waitress," Lorenzo said calmly. "Sit down, Elsa." Elsa took the empty chair at the opposite end of the table. She placed her laptop on the wood. She didn't sit. She stood. "My name is Elsa," she said, her voice steady, projecting to the back of the room. "And I've reviewed your books for the last fiscal year. You're bleeding out." Luca slammed his hand on the table. "Watch your mouth, sweetheart. We cleared $40 million last quarter." "You cleared $40 million in revenue," Elsa corrected, locking eyes with him. "But your laundering costs are eating 30%. You're washing cash through strip clubs, laundromats, and waste management. That's 1980s thinking. The IRS algorithms flag any cash business with a variance of more than 5% year over year. You're paying Dario's guys to structure deposits under 10 grand, which is tedious and legally transparent." The room went quiet. Luca sneered. "What do you propose? Bitcoin? The feds track the blockchain now." "No," Elsa said. "Green energy credits." Salvatore frowned. "What?" "Carbon credits." Elsa refrained, pacing slowly. "Corporations buy them to offset their pollution. It's a multi-billion-dollar market, unregulated and opaque. We set up a shell company in Nevada, a solar farm project that doesn't actually exist yet. We buy dirty credits from developing nations for pennies on the dollar using your cash reserves, routed through a blind trust in the Cayman Islands. We then repackage them as premium grade A credits and sell them to Fortune 500 companies who need to meet their ESG quotas." She leaned forward, palms on the table. "The money comes back to you as a check from Amazon or Google or Tesla. Perfectly clean, taxed at the capital gains rate, not income. You save 20% on taxes, you eliminate the laundering fee, and you gain an asset that appreciates. I can triple your net profit in 6 months." Lorenzo watched her. He wasn't looking at the numbers. He was looking at her, the way she commanded the room. The way she took Luca's aggression and snapped it like a twig. A strange heat coiled in his stomach. "Bullshit," Luca spat. "It's too complicated. I like cash." "Then you like prison," Elsa shot back. Luca stood up, his face flushing red. He reached for the gun tucked into his waistband. Before Luca could clear the holster, Lorenzo had a silver pistol in his hand. He didn't point it at Luca, he just set it loudly on the table. The heavy thud of the metal silenced the room. "She's right," Lorenzo said softly. "We're done with the old ways." "Luca, sit down." Luca glared at Elsa, hate burning in his eyes, but he sat. "Do it," Lorenzo said to Elsa. "Set up the Nevada shell." "But Elsa." "Yes? If this goes wrong," Lorenzo's eyes were like glaciers. "If the IRS knocks on my door, I won't send a lawyer, I'll send Luca." Elsa swallowed hard, nodding. "Understood." 2 weeks later, the machine was humming. Elsa worked out of an office next to Lorenzo's. She rarely slept. She moved millions of dollars across borders with a few keystrokes, weaving a tapestry of financial obscurity that was a work of art. The green energy scheme was working better than predicted. The money was flowing in, white and clean, but Elsa couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. It was a Tuesday night. Rain lashed against the windows. Lorenzo was in a meeting with the union reps, and Elsa was alone in her office, cross-referencing the payroll for the construction crews. The physical front for the solar farm, she found a discrepancy. A small data packet was being outgoing from the server every night at 3 a.m. It wasn't money, it was information. Ledgers, emails, meeting transcripts. Someone was copying the hard drive. Her heart stopped. She traced the IP address. It was internal. Someone inside the penthouse was sending data to an external server in Virginia. Quantico. The FBI. Before she could close the laptop, the elevator doors in the hallway chimed. But it wasn't the smooth chime of a guest arrival. It was the frantic, repeated ding of an override. Heavy boots hit the marble floor. FBI! Nobody move! Elsa slammed her laptop shut. She stood up just as the glass doors of her office shattered. 3 agents in tactical gear stormed in, rifles raised. Hands where I can see them. Elsa raised her hands, her breath catching in her throat through the glass walls. She saw chaos. Lorenzo's bodyguards were on the floor, zip-tied. Lorenzo was standing in the middle of the hallway, his hands raised, looking calm but deadly. A man in a cheap suit walked in behind the tactical team. Agent Miller. He looked at Lorenzo with a smug grin. Lorenzo Moretti, Miller said. You're under arrest for racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit fraud. You have no evidence, Lorenzo said, his voice level. Oh, we have everything, Miller laughed. We have the ledgers. We have the green energy scheme. We have it all. He turned and pointed a finger at Elsa. Thanks to your new CFO. Lorenzo's head snapped toward Elsa. The betrayal in his eyes was instantaneous and terrifying. It was worse than a bullet. I didn't. Elsa stammered, shaking her head. Lorenzo, I didn't. Elsa stammered, shaking her head. She's been cooperating for weeks. Miller lied smoothly, enjoying the drama. Elsa Bennett. Or should I say, the witness who is going to put you away for life. Get him out of here, Miller ordered. As the agents moved to cuff Lorenzo, the elevator dinged again. This time it was Luca and Dario, arriving late, guns drawn before they even saw the cops. Federal agents, drop it. The standoff was immediate. Guns pointed at guns. The air crackled with violence. Don't shoot, Lorenzo commanded his men. Dario, stand down. Dario hesitated, then lowered his weapon. The agents swarmed them. In the chaos, Luca lunged not at the cops but at Elsa. You rat, Luca screamed, breaking free from an agent. He pulled a knife from his boot and charged into her office. Elsa scrambled back, tripping over her chair. Luca was on her in a second, the blade gleaming. Luca, no! Lorenzo roared, fighting against the 2 agents holding him. Elsa kicked out, her heel connecting with Luca's shin, but he was too strong. He grabbed her hair, yanking her head back, raising the knife. Bang! The glass beside Luca's head shattered. Luca froze. Lorenzo had managed to grab an agent's sidearm in the scuffle. He wasn't aiming at the cops, he was aiming at his own cousin. Back off, Lorenzo growled, his face a mask of pure fury. Touch her, and you die. She sold us out, Enzo, Luca screamed, spit flying. I said back off. Agent Miller stepped in, waving his men to disarm everyone. Enough, you're all coming in. They were hauled out in handcuffs. Elsa was placed in a separate car from Lorenzo. As she was shoved into the back of the cruiser, she locked eyes with him through the rain-streaked window. He looked at her with a mixture of hatred and confusion. He thought she had done it. He thought she was the rat, and Elsa knew that if she didn't prove her innocence before they made bail, she wouldn't survive the night. 2 hours later, Elsa sat in a cold metal chair. Agent Miller tossed a file on the table. You did good, Elsa, Miller said. We have enough to bury Moretti. You testify, and the embezzlement charges against you regarding the cartel money. They disappear. You get witness protection. Arizona, maybe. A nice, quiet life. Elsa looked at him. I didn't send you those files. Miller smirked. Does it matter? Moretti thinks you did. His cousin Luca definitely thinks you did. If we release you now, you're dead in an hour. Your only choice is to sign this confession and testify. Elsa's mind raced. She realized what was happening. Miller didn't have a witness. He had a leak, but he didn't want to burn his real source. He was using Elsa as the scapegoat to protect the actual rat inside the Moretti family. I want my phone call, Elsa said. You're not under arrest. You're a cooperating witness, Miller said. I'm not cooperating, Elsa hissed. I want my lawyer. Or rather, I want his lawyer. Miller's smile faded. Lorenzo sat on the bench, his tie undone, staring at the concrete floor. Dario sat next to him. It was her, Renzo, Dario said quietly. Miller knew about the Nevada shell. Only 3 people knew the details. You, me, and Elsa, and Luca. Lorenzo said, Luca is family. Dario dismissed. He's an idiot, but he's loyal. Elsa is a mercenary. She did the math. Selling us out was more profitable. Lorenzo closed his eyes. He remembered the way she looked in the car. The fear, but also the defiance. Why did she refuse to leave the car that first night? Why did she work so hard to fix the books? The cell door buzzed. A guard stepped in. Moretti, your lawyer is here. And he brought a guest. Lorenzo stood up. He walked into the visitation room. Sitting there wasn't his usual high-priced attorney. It was Elsa. She was handcuffed to the table, but she had a laptop open in front of her, one of the lawyer's laptops. Give me 2 minutes, Elsa said before Lorenzo could speak. Give me one reason why I shouldn't reach across this table and snap your neck, Lorenzo said, his voice vibrating with suppressed rage. Because the data transfer happened at 3 a.m. every night, Elsa said, typing frantically with one hand. Look at the logs. At 3 a.m., I was in bed. The biometric scanner on my apartment door proves I didn't leave. She spun the laptop around. But look who was active on the network. Lorenzo looked at the screen. It was a security log from the server room. User ID LUSK02. That's Luca's ID, Lorenzo whispered. No, Elsa said. Luca is too stupid to use a VPN. He couldn't set up the auto-forwarding script. Someone used Luca's credentials to frame him, and then framed me when the heat got too high. She clicked another window. A bank transfer, $500,000 deposited into an offshore account in the Cook Islands yesterday. The account holder is hidden, but the routing number traces back to a shell company owned by Salvatore. Lorenzo froze. Salvatore, his uncle, the man who sat at his right hand, the man who hated the changes Lorenzo was making. Salvatore didn't like the green energy deal, Elsa said rapidly. He wants the old ways. He wants you out of the way so he can take over, but he couldn't kill you. It would start a war, so he fed you to the feds. He framed me because I'm the outsider. He used Luca's login to set up a fall guy if needed. Lorenzo stared at the data. It was undeniable. The timestamp on the transfer matched the timestamp on the data leak. Miller knows, Elsa said. Miller is protecting Salvatore. They have a deal. Salvatore gives up you. Miller gets a career making arrest, and Salvatore takes over the family. Lorenzo looked up at Elsa. The hatred in his eyes vanished, replaced by a profound respect. And something else. Regret. You stayed, Lorenzo said. You could have taken Miller's deal. You could have testified. I don't like being used, Elsa said, her chin high. And I don't run from a fight. Lorenzo reached out and covered her hand with his. His touch was electric. We need to get out of here, Lorenzo said. And when we do, Uncle Salvatore is going to wish he died in his sleep. How do we get out? Elsa asked. We're in federal custody. Lorenzo smirked, the devilish charm returning. You handled the finances, Elsa. Let me handle the legal system. Or rather, the illegal system. Or rather, the illegal system. He turned to the guard, who had been standing by the door the whole time, looking bored. Officer Reynolds, Lorenzo said. The wire transfer has been initiated to your retirement fund. Open the back door. The guard smiled and pulled out a keycard. Pleasure doing business, Mr. Moretti. Elsa's jaw dropped. Everyone has a price, Elsa, Lorenzo whispered, pulling her up from the chair. Now run. The unmarked Audi RS7 tore up the Taconic State Parkway at 140 miles per hour, weaving through the sparse night traffic like a black phantom. Lorenzo drove with one hand on the wheel, his eyes scanning the mirrors every 3 seconds. Elsa sat in the passenger seat, the lawyer's stolen laptop clutching to her chest like a shield. The adrenaline from the precinct escape was fading, replaced by a cold, shivering shock. There's a tracker in the car, Elsa said suddenly, her voice barely a whisper. Modern luxury cars. They all have telematics. If Miller issued a bolo, they can ping the GPS. I know, Lorenzo said calmly. He didn't slow down. That's why we're ditching it in Poughkeepsie. I have a swap car waiting at a storage unit. You have a swap car? I have swap cars in 5 counties, Elsa. Paranoia is expensive, but it pays dividends. They switched vehicles 20 minutes later in a nondescript self-storage facility. The new ride was a battered 2015 Ford F-150 with rusted wheel wells, completely invisible in upstate New York. Lorenzo tossed their phones into a microwave in the storage unit and turned it on before they left. No digital footprint, he said. From now on, we are ghosts. They drove for another 2 hours into the deep woods of the Catskills. The rain turned to sleet, then to heavy snow. The road became a dirt track, winding up a mountain that felt like the edge of the world. The safe house was a timber-framed cabin overlooking a frozen lake. It looked rustic, but as Lorenzo unlocked the door, Elsa noticed the keypad was military-grade and the windows were ballistic glass. Inside, the air was freezing. Lorenzo immediately went to the stone fireplace and began stacking logs. There's a generator out back, but we won't run it until morning, he said. The noise travels. We'll have to make do with the fire. Elsa stood in the middle of the room, shivering violently. It wasn't just the cold, it was the reality of her situation crashing down. She was a fugitive. Again, but this time, she wasn't running from a cartel. She was running with a mob boss who had just saved her life. Lorenzo got the fire roaring. The orange glow illuminated his face, sharp, tired, and impossibly handsome. He turned to her and saw her shaking. Come here, he commanded gently. I'm fine, she chattered. You're hypothermic and in shock. Come here. She walked toward the fire. Lorenzo took off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It was heavy and smelled of him cedar and gunpowder. He pulled a dusty bottle of bourbon from a cabinet and poured 2 glasses. Drink, he said. Medicinal. She took a sip. It burned, but it settled her nerves. They sat on the rug in front of the fire, the only source of heat in the vast darkness. Why? Elsa asked, staring into the flames. Why did you come back for me? You could have walked out. You could have let Miller bury me. Lorenzo swirled his glass. Because you didn't sell me out. You could have signed that confession and walked away, but you didn't. Loyalty is a currency, Elsa. It's rarer than diamonds. When I find it, I protect it. He looked at her, his gaze softening. And I realized I didn't want to run this empire without you. You were right about the green energy. You were right about everything. Salvatore is a relic. You are the future. Elsa looked down. I'm not a future. I'm a thief, Lorenzo. The cartel money. I didn't steal it for greed. Then why? My father, she whispered. He was a gambling addict. He got in deep with the wrong people in Mexico City. They were going to kill him. They demanded $5 million. I was at Goldman. I saw a way to reroute the funds from a cartel account that we were quietly managing. I thought I could pay them off and put the money back before the quarter closed. She wiped a tear away. But the interest, it kept growing. They kept demanding more. I ended up taking 50 million just to keep him alive for another year. He died of a heart attack anyway, and I was left holding the bag with a target on my back. Lorenzo listened in silence. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered on her jawline. "You did it for family," Lorenzo said. "That makes you more like me than you think." The tension in the room shifted. It wasn't about survival anymore. The air felt thick, charged with an undeniable magnetic pull. Lorenzo leaned in closer. Elsa didn't pull away. Her breath hitched. "Lorenzo," she breathed. "We're going to fix this," he murmured, his eyes searching hers. "I'm going to kill Salvatore, and then I'm going to give you the world." He leaned in to kiss her, but Elsa pulled back sharply, standing up. "No," she said, her voice trembling. "Not like this. Not while we're hunted. I can't be distracted, Lorenzo. If we don't stop Salvatore, we're dead. Let's survive first." Lorenzo looked at her, frustration and admiration warring in his eyes. He nodded slowly. "You're right," he said, standing up. "First survival, then vengeance, then everything else." The sun rose over a world painted white. The snow was 2 feet deep, isolating them completely. By 8 a.m., the cabin had transformed into a war room. Elsa had connected the lawyer's laptop to a satellite uplink Lorenzo had hidden in the floorboards. "Okay," Elsa said, cracking her knuckles. "Salvatore framed me using digital trails. I'm going to use those same trails to hang him." Lorenzo sharpened a combat knife at the kitchen table. He's old school. He keeps his real money offline. Cash and gold. "Everyone has a digital footprint, Lorenzo. Even a ghost," Elsa muttered, her eyes scanning lines of code. "He moved 500 grand to the Cook Islands to pay off the mole in the FBI. That money had to come from somewhere liquid." She spent 3 hours digging through the shell company structures she had memorized weeks ago. She looked for the anomalies she had previously ignored, the small leaks that she thought were just inefficiencies. "Found it," she said. Lorenzo was at her side in a second. "What?" "Salvatore has a weakness," Elsa pointed at the screen. "He doesn't trust banks, but he trusts his grandson, Nico. Nico runs a crypto mining operation in Jersey. It's terrible, it loses money, but Salvatore pumps millions into it to keep the kid happy. He's using the mining rig as a tumbler." Elsa grinned, a predator's smile. "He's moving his war chest the money he needs to pay his soldiers to hunt us into Bitcoin wallets controlled by Nico." "Can you steal it?" Lorenzo asked. "Better," Elsa said. "I can taint it." "Explain." "The FBI maintains a list of blacklisted crypto addresses associated with terrorism and human trafficking. If any wallet interacts with those addresses, every major exchange freezes the assets instantly, and the Department of Homeland Security gets an alert." She typed a command. "I'm going to send 0.01 Bitcoin from a known terror watch list wallet directly into Salvatore's main holding account. It's called a dusting attack. The moment the dirty dust hits his account, the entire blockchain will flag his millions as radioactive. Coinbase, Binance, the banks, they'll all freeze him out. He won't be able to buy a pack of gum, let alone pay a hitman." "Do it," Lorenzo said. Elsa hit enter. On the screen, a progress bar loaded. "Transaction confirmed. It's done." Elsa leaned back. Within 10 minutes, his accounts will lock up. His soldiers won't get their wire transfers. Loyalty ends when the checks bounce, Lorenzo. Lorenzo smiled. It was the first time he looked truly relaxed in 24 hours. "You just dismantled a 40-year empire with a button press. You're dangerous, Elsa." "I learned from the best," she replied. Suddenly, the silence of the woods was broken. A crack echoed through the valley. Then the shattering of glass. The coffee mug on the table exploded next to Elsa's hand. "Down!" Lorenzo roared, tackling Elsa to the floor. Another bullet tore through the window. embedding itself in the refrigerator. "Snipers!" Lorenzo hissed, crawling toward his duffel bag. He pulled out an assault rifle and a heavy pistol. He slid the pistol across the floor to Elsa. "Do you know how to use this?" I've shot a taser," Elsa panicked. "Point and pull." "Don't hit me," Lorenzo said. They tracked the satellite uplink. I was sloppy. He low-crawled to the window, peering through the broken glass. 3 tangos coming up the ridge, white camouflage. "Professional Salvatore's men?" Elsa asked, gripping the gun with shaking hands. "No," Lorenzo said grimly. "These guys are moving in a tactical formation. They aren't mobsters, they're mercenaries. Salvatore hired the cleaners. They don't leave bodies." Lorenzo popped up and fired 2 controlled bursts. A scream echoed from the trees. "That's 1, he muttered. "Stay down, Elsa. I'm going out there to flank them." "You're leaving the cabin. If they get close enough to throw a grenade, we're toast. I have to draw their fire." He looked at her one last time. "If I don't come back in 5 minutes, take the snowmobile in the shed and run. Don't look back." Lorenzo. He didn't wait. He kicked open the back door and sprinted into the snow. Gunfire rebucked immediately. Elsa huddled under the heavy oak table, covering her ears. She heard shouting, the thud-thud thrust rifles, and the roar of Lorenzo's weapon. Then, silence. Elsa waited. 1 minute. 2 minutes. 3. The silence was deafening. "He's dead." Her mind screamed. "He's dead." Her mind screamed. "He's dead, and they're coming for me." She heard the crunch of boots on the snow on the front porch. Slow. Deliberate. She raised the pistol, aiming at the door. Her hands shook uncontrollably. The doorknob turned. The door creaked open. The figure stood there, silhouetted by the bright snow. Elsa squeezed her eyes shut and pulled the trigger. Click, the safety was on. She gasped, fumbling with the latch. "Elsa, it's me." She opened her eyes. Lorenzo stood there. He was bleeding from a graze on his cheek, and his tactical vest had 2 fresh impact marks. But he was alive. She dropped the gun and ran to him. He caught her, slamming the door shut with his foot. She buried her face in his chest, sobbing. "I thought you were dead. I thought I killed you." "You forgot the safety," Lorenzo chuckled breathlessly, wincing as he held her. "Thank God for that." He pulled back and looked at her. The adrenaline was peaking for both of them. The near-death experience stripped away the last of their reservations. "They're all down," Lorenzo said, "but more will come. We have to move." "Wait," Elsa said, grabbing his lapels. She pulled him down and kissed him. It was fierce, desperate, and tasted of blood and snow. Lorenzo groaned, wrapping his arms around her waist, lifting her off the ground. For a moment, the war outside didn't exist. There was only the heat of the fire and the heat between them. He broke the kiss, breathing hard, his forehead resting against hers. "I've wanted to do that since you told me about the peer-to-peer lending in Estonia." Elsa laughed, a wet, breathless sound. "That's the nerdiest pickup line I've ever heard." "We need to go," Lorenzo said, serious again. "Salvatore is broke, but he's desperate. He's going to go to the one place he thinks is safe, the old warehouse in Queens." "Why there?" "Because that's where the family vault is, the physical gold. It's the only asset you couldn't freeze. He's going to try to grab it and flee the country." Lorenzo loaded a fresh magazine into his rifle. His eyes were cold steel again. "We're going to meet him there, and we're going to end this." The warehouse in Queens was a fortress of rusted corrugated iron sitting in the shadow of the expressway. It belonged to Gemini Properties, the phantom vendor Elsa had identified on her very first night. Lorenzo parked the truck 3 blocks away. He checked his rifle one last time. "You stay here," Lorenzo said. "If I'm not back in 20 minutes, you call the number I gave you. It's a cleaner in Montreal. He'll get you a new identity." I'm coming with you, Elsa said, unbuckling her seatbelt. Elsa, no. This isn't a spreadsheet. This is a slaughter. And you can't open the vault without me, she lied. The security system is biometric, but I reset the protocols remotely when I access the server at the cabin. If you kill Salvatore, the vault locks down for 99 years. You need me to leverage the gold. Lorenzo stared at her. He knew she was bluffing. The vault was mechanical, old school, but he also saw the fire in her eyes. She wasn't asking for permission. Stay behind me, he growled, and if shooting starts, you drop to the floor. They moved through the shadows of the industrial yard, slipping through a side door Lorenzo had keyed years ago. Inside, the warehouse was cavernous, smelled of diesel and dust. In the center, under the harsh glare of floodlights, stood a massive steel vault. Salvatore was there. He looked haggard, his suit rumpled. He was surrounded by 4 armed men, the last of his loyal crew, and kneeling on the concrete, zip-tied to a pillar, was Dario. He had been beaten badly. One eye was swollen shut, blood dripping onto his shirt. "Come out, Enzo!" Salvatore shouted, his voice echoing off the metal rafters. "I know you're here! I can smell your cologne!" Lorenzo stepped out from behind a stack of shipping crates, rifle raised. Elsa stayed in the shadows behind him. "Let him go, Uncle," Lorenzo said calmly. "The war is over. Your accounts are frozen. You have nothing. I have the gold." Salvatore spat, gesturing to the vault. 50 million in bullion. Unmarked. Untraceable. "I take this. I disappear, and I leave you to the feds." "You can't open it," Lorenzo said. "I have the combination." "The combination changed when the system detected the dusting attack on your crypto," Lorenzo improvised, following Elsa's lead. "It's in lockdown." Salvatore's face turned purple. He pulled a gun and pressed it to Dario's head. "Then open it, or your consigliere paints the floor." Lorenzo hesitated. He had a shot, but if he missed, Dario was dead. Suddenly, Elsa stepped out into the light. Her hands were raised, but her chin was high. "I can open it," she announced. "Elsa, get back!" Lorenzo barked. Salvatore laughed, a wheezing, ugly sound. "Ah, the waitress, the genius. Come here, sweetheart. Open the door, and I might let you live." Elsa walked forward, her heels clicking on the concrete. She stopped 10 feet from Salvatore. "I'll open it," she said. "But first, you let Dario go. Open it first." Salvatore screamed. Elsa walked to the massive steel wheel of the vault. She placed her hand on the cold metal. She spun the dial. Left to 40. Right to 12. Left to 25. It was the original combination. She hadn't changed anything because she couldn't. She was betting everything on what was inside. Clank. Hiss. The heavy bolts retracted. The door groaned open. Salvatore shoved Dario aside and ran toward the open vault, his eyes wide with greed. "The gold! It's mine!" He stepped inside the dark chamber. "Now!" Elsa screamed, dropping to the ground. From the darkness of the vault, a blinding light flared. "Federal agents! Drop the WAPON!" Salvatore froze. Inside the vault, standing amidst the stacks of gold bars, were 6 FBI agents in tactical gear, rifles trained on Salvatore's chest. Salvatore spun around, confused. What? How? Behind him, Agent Miller, the corrupt cop, walked out from the shadows of the warehouse entrance, but Miller wasn't holding a gun. He was in handcuffs, being escorted by a stern woman in a trench coat. Director Cohen of the Department of Justice. "Salvatore Moretti," Director Cohen announced, her voice cutting through the noise. "You are under arrest for conspiracy, murder, and racketeering, and thanks to the recorded confession sent to my office 3 hours ago, we also have you for bribing a federal officer." Salvatore looked at Elsa. "You." Elsa stood up, dusting off her knees. "I didn't just hack your bank account, Salvatore. When I was in the cabin, I patched into Agent Miller's phone. I recorded every call he made to you. I sent the audio files directly to the DOJ in Washington. They beat you here." Salvatore dropped his gun. It clattered on the floor. As the agents swarmed Salvatore and his men, Lorenzo stood frozen. He looked at Elsa. "You called the feds?" he whispered. "You called the DOJ on us?" Elsa walked over to him. "No. I called them on Salvatore and Miller. I made a deal, Lorenzo." Director Cohen walked over to them. She looked at Lorenzo, then at Elsa. "Miss Bennett," Cohen said, "your cooperation has been illuminating. The DOJ accepts your terms. The files on Lorenzo Moretti's legitimate businesses are clean. The files on Lorenzo Moretti's legitimate businesses are clean. The files on the other activities seem to have been corrupted during the data transfer, irretrievable." Cohen smirked slightly. "Mr. Moretti, it seems your waitress is a better lawyer than she is a criminal. You're free to go, but if I catch you jaywalking, I'm taking you down." Cohen turned and walked away, barking orders to her team to load Salvatore into the van. Lorenzo looked at Elsa, stunned. "You negotiated immunity for both of us." "I told you," Elsa smiled, though her hands were shaking. "I used to work for Goldman Sachs. I know how to structure a deal." Lorenzo didn't speak. He grabbed her face in his hands and kissed her. It wasn't desperate like the cabin. It was a promise, a seal on a contract that would last a lifetime. "Okay," Lorenzo whispered against her lips. "You're definitely hired." 6 months later. The rain in Tribeca was soft this time, washing the city clean. The Obsidian was closed for renovations. In its place, a new sign was being hung, Moretti and Bennett Capital. Inside the penthouse office, Elsa sat behind a mahogany desk that was twice the size of her old one. She was typing furiously. "We have a problem," she said, not looking up. Lorenzo walked in, holding 2 espressos. He was wearing a lighter suit now, looking less like a hitman and more like the CEO he had become. The criminal empire was gone dismantled piece by piece and converted into legitimate holdings. It was boring, but it was safe. "What kind of problem?" Lorenzo asked, setting the coffee down. "SEC, IRS. "Worse," Elsa said, spinning her chair around. She held up a piece of paper. "The wedding planner says the venue in Lake Como is double booked." Lorenzo laughed. He walked around the desk and pulled her into his lap. "We own the venue, Elsa. I think we can bump the other party." "That's very mobster of you," she teased, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Old habits," he grinned. He looked at her, his eyes full of love. "You know, I still have that spreadsheet, the one from the first night." "Burn it," she said. "Never. It reminds me of the best financial decision I ever made." Which was asking the waitress for advice. Elsa kissed him, the skyline of New York glittering behind them. She wasn't running anymore. She wasn't hiding. She was exactly where she belonged, balancing the books and balancing the boss. And that is how Elsa Bennett turned a minimum wage shift into a multi-million-dollar empire and stole the heart of the King of Wall Street. She proved that in a world of muscle and guns, the sharpest weapon is always the mind. Salvatore is serving 3 life sentences. Agent Miller is in federal prison. And Lorenzo and Elsa? Well, let's just say their returns are compounding daily. Now, I have a question for you. In the final standoff, Elsa bluffed about the vault to buy time. Would you have had the guts to walk up to a loaded gun with nothing but a lie? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this roller coaster of mafia romance and high-stakes finance, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. And if you want to hear the story of how Dario got his revenge on the men who beat him up, click the video on screen right now. Thanks for watching, and stay sharp.